What's up, friends? Today we're here with the MBS Agent Explorer. And if you haven't seen this electric mountain board yet, I encourage you to check out my other videos that I've done so far, my first look and range tests, as it gives some insight into how this board rides and sort of what it's all about. But in this review today, I want to tell you about my experience over the last 100-ish miles and sort of explain to you why I think this is one of the best boards on the market that you can buy and why it might be for more people than you might think. So, starting right off, let's just jump into a couple specs so you have an idea of what we're working with here. From back to front, at the back we have 6890 motors, very high powered. MBS spec quotes approximately 3.8 kilowatts each. This is going to depend on how much power output is actually going through them at the time, but they're very powerful, and from what I've seen, they're quite well made. Attached to those are gear drives. These are steel on steel gear drives with a well-sealed enclosure that has gaskets and is grease packed with a 15:64 gear ratio. On the outside, you have a vibration dampening interface, which is great. And then powering those motors, you have an ESC at the back, the only 18S hobbywing ESC on the market that I'm aware of. Does a really good job, has an integrated brake light. Moving forwards, we have the 18S 4P in this case battery. This is an 18S 4P of Molicel P42As coming in just over 1,000 watt hours. And you'll see that I have two of them here. I'll explain why later, but this attaches to the deck with a quick swap system, one of the coolest things on the market. And then at the front, there's nothing else really that interesting, but you do have built-in cable channels in this specifically made for e-skate deck that help integrate the cables underneath the bindings and keep them out of the way, so you don't even feel them when you have a binding on the board. On this particular spec, we do have the MBS F5X bindings, which I'll talk about later as well. And then to control all of that, you have the Exway Rexus remote, which this project is sort of a collaboration with Exway, and so they were able to use their proprietary radio connection and hobbywing speed controller. So let's start getting into why this is one of the coolest boards on the market. So why do I think that this board is for more people than you might think? Well, when you look at the use case for an electric skateboard, you have a couple different categories. One is a commuter who uses it to get to their job or to the store or to a friend's house or whatever. That's more of a long range thing most of the time. You have a last mile commuter, which is like someone that uses it to get off the public transit and go to their job. Very short distances. Usually people like that prefer short boards or things that are more portable. And then you also have another category, which is like the for fun people, which do big group rides, go off-roading, and just generally use it as a enjoyable experience rather than a tool. Now, what's interesting about the MBS Agent is that I think it can actually fulfill multiple of those categories. Now, I would never consider or be delusional to think that this could be a last mile commuter because it's just not practical. Nobody wants to carry around a 50-pound board through public transit or try and fit it into small taxis or whatever your situation may be. But this definitely fills out the enjoyment category for group riders and for people that like doing things on their own. And it also can do the job of the commuter because it does have pretty good range if you go for the 18S 4P option. It's still 1,000 and I think 1,084 watt hours of capacity, and that really gets you pretty far. If you saw my range test, you'll know that I got about 27 miles of range, and I think that's pretty good. I think most people don't even ride that far. However, if you want to go much further, like 50 miles or so, you will have to put another battery in your backpack. It's a bit heavy, but you can do it, and the fact that it's quick swap makes it really easy. Now, as far as fulfilling all the roles, it's just a really comfortable board to ride on the street. You can take it off-road whenever you want. You can go through the grass. It will eat it up like no problem. Unlike a board that might have like 90mm urethane, it'll do fine for the street. You can probably work it out over some bumps and rocks. This will just go straight over them, plow over it like it's nothing. It's a mountain board. If you never tried one before, this is the top tier premium experience. And honestly, I would be surprised if there's anything on the market that comes close to the premium experience that you get with the Agent. Now, it's definitely not going to be for everyone. Like I said, it's very heavy. It's pretty bulky, and honestly, it's pretty hard to fit in smaller cars. I do have to put my rear seats down in my sedan. It fits fine in larger cars, but you might still have to put the seats down if it's not able to fit side to side. It is pretty long and tall, but you can take off the battery to make it a little bit shorter. Now, like I said, not going to be for everyone, but I think that a lot more people could use it than they think. In any case, there's a couple major points that make this thing really cool. So let's go through those. First off, build quality. The overall build quality of this board is incredible. Everything is made really well. It's solid. There's no rattling anywhere. Everything is bolted down, water resistant, and honestly, it just gives me so much it inspires so much confidence in me when I'm riding on it. You can just hop off curbs, go over rocks, go through grass and dirt and puddles and everything, and it just keeps on going. The gear drives sound really good. They sound well adjusted, if you know what I mean. The backlash is good. They're not too loud, and the motors are really well protected by the rear bash guard. So everything just fits together perfectly. All the materials are premium. It was really well thought out. The CNC trucks are great, and I really just have no complaints about it in the build quality perspective. It does the job, and it exceeds it in my opinion, especially when compared to some other boards that I've ridden on, and compared to some less premium offerings from other competitors. Now, you do pay for it. Don't get me wrong, it's expensive, but I think it's worth it, and I think the customer service that backs up your purchase makes it even more worth it. Now, the second thing that I think is really cool on here is the quick swap battery. This quick swap battery is fastened to the board so well that if you crash, I'm pretty sure the board would break before the battery comes off. And that's really saying a lot because quick swap is hard to do right. MBS really did it right here, and it only takes 10 seconds to swap the battery. Very easy and very confidence inspiring. Cool system that they designed for sure, and I hope that other manufacturers, I don't want them to copy MBS necessarily, but if they take notes from something like this, I think we'll end up with a lot more mountain boards that have a great quick swap battery. There are two battery options for this board, an 18S2P and an 18S4P. Now, it'd be cool if MBS were to offer an even bigger one in the future for somebody that just really wants to go really far, but as it is, this battery is fairly heavy. I'll put the weight on screen now, but it's worth it in my opinion to have the 18S4P over the 2P just for the extra headroom in terms of range. If you're trying to jump this board, then yeah, go to the 2P, but I have to imagine that you're not going to get much more than maybe 15 miles of range out of it, because you're both stressing the batteries more and you have less watt hours. So 18S2P is still not bad, somewhere around 500 watt hours, but you chew through it pretty quickly when you're drawing more amps from the cells. Fun fact on that side, there is actually a setting in the remote to switch between 2P and 4P. I don't know for sure, maybe MBS can say something in the comments of this video if the 2P versus 4P setting actually changes the amount of current that the ESC draws from the battery. If it does, definitely make sure you have the 4P setting when you switch, or if you get it with the 4P battery, because you wouldn't want to be missing out on performance. Now, like I said, I can't confirm that, but it's cool that they thought of that in there, and maybe there's a bit of a difference. But as it stands, I think the 4P is a better option. It does make the board heavier, it's going to give you more range, and it's probably going to last longer in the long run. The final thing that makes this super good is the fine-tuned setup. You can really tell as soon as you get on this thing that MBS has put a ton of work into the way this thing feels. The deck bounce is great. There's enough bump in it and enough bounce that it makes it really comfortable to go over big rocks and hop off curbs. And it just, It's one of the best mountain board experiences I've had. My own mountain board, the MBS Hero Medium Flex, is fairly similar to the performance of this, and I think they're probably the two best mountain board experiences that you can have out there. I haven't spent any time on the Aztec offerings or who else makes a mountain board? I think Aztec is the main one. Propel sort of does, but they don't have a flexible deck like this. So I haven't figured out what they feel like in comparison, but I know that this blows Tramp out of the water, at least at this point in time. But the rest of the setup, the ESC, the motors, and the response on the remote are really well tuned, and it's punchy when it needs to be and easy to control the rest of the time. The brakes are incredible, so much so that I would say most people will need to turn it down from the maximum. I have it set on max braking at 9 because I like really strong brakes, and you'll see in the performance spec how much better it did than all the other boards, but most people probably wanted a little less than that. Having that off-road is amazing. You'll see in another video that I recorded comparing it to my DIY how well it does off-road, but overall, just the whole setup working together is so well tuned that I just have to give MBS major props for that. It's probably one of the best tuned boards out of the box that I've ridden from a, I guess, production manufacturer. So all of that to say, it's an amazing board. I think it's worth the price. And if you're considering buying it and you don't care about the rest of the performance specs and stuff, I think this is definitely a great option and will probably last longer and be more well supported than most of the other companies out there. I have a really high factor of trust for MBS. They've been in the community for a long time, supported DIY stuff, supported replacement parts, right to repair, and I just think that they're doing really good stuff. So if you need a mountain board, this is probably the best option. But let me show you the really cool stuff, how it smacks around the rest of the boards on the market with its performance. All right, it's time for the PSPEC, which for me is the most exciting part of these videos because I just love comparing the raw data. Now, the MBS Agent did really well overall, and the first thing we're starting with is acceleration. I want to give a caveat here. The MBS Agent acceleration is brutal and very difficult to fully master, we'll put it that way. It was sort of similar on the rev, but the rev is a bit longer, I think, and it's just a little bit more planted, and the truck design is different. And for me, when I was doing my acceleration testing, 0 to 20s, I was able to master pretty much and get the best time possible. The 0 to 30s were really difficult, and the 100 meter sprint was really difficult because once I got over 20, I had this sort of weird vibration mode where the back truck would sort of bounce a little bit, and it was just really hard to push through that and confidently get my 100 meter sprints. That being said, I do think that these times that I got are valid, but it's possible that in certain circumstances on certain roads, you might be able to do better. However, all of the testing with all of my boards is done on the same road for a reason, because the point is to compare them to each other using the same statistics. So what I got today is good, but I do think that on the 0 to 30 time and a 100 meter sprint, you can probably do a little bit better. Either way, it's still really impressive performance. So going into the 0 to 20 times, we got a best time of 2.33 seconds. And that's really impressive. You take out my race board phases, you've got the Phantom X, the MLR, and then both of the Nomad N1 and N3 boards coming in there. Now, you might think that's a little strange, but the fact of the matter is the Nomad N3 and N1 had also brutal acceleration at the beginning. Those are way harder to control than this. The finesse or the refinement in the acceleration on this board is very good. It feels very smooth. You can just full throttle it and you'll go. Believe me, you have to lean forward, so otherwise you get knocked off your feet. So 2.33, pretty great time for 0 to 20. It did come in, all these boards accounted for 7th place. So it's not the very top, but it is very quick. And like I said, you might be able to get a better time if you really tried. I did about 10 runs to get down to this time. I started in the like mid 3s and gradually chipped away the time until I got 4 runs that were really close to each other. So yeah, it's pretty tough. Very brutal acceleration. And when you look at the torque in a second, you'll understand why it feels so crazy at the start. As far as 0 to 30 time, I was able to reach 30 miles an hour on this board. However, the times weren't that incredible. My best time that I got was 6.43 seconds, which is pretty fast, but it gets absolutely demolished by the Phantom X all the way down at 2.6 seconds. So, like I said, it's a little bit hard to get from the 20 to 30 range. I did my best. I did a lot of runs to get this time, and it's still fairly respectable, but you might be able to do better. Coming in at 6.43 for the best time, it came in 6th place behind all those other boards that you see on screen right now. All right, so the time for the 100-meter sprint for the MBS Agent was fairly decent, came in at 9.11 as its best time, and that puts it in 6th place on the chart. Again, the Phantom X, quite a bit faster, 7.03 seconds. We are talking a little bit of a difference in price, but this is the difference between 18S 4P and 20S 6P and Hobbywing versus the D100S. So you have to take these things into consideration. They're not quite the same. I do have a feeling that this ESC could be a little bit more reliable than the VESC powered ones, but you never know. It's a time thing. I've had this for a long time and it's worked well. So decent job on the 100-meter sprint. Like I said before, you might be able to get better, but this was the best I could do in the time that I had. Next up, braking. And this is one section that it absolutely killed in. The braking for the MBS Agent came to a best distance of 11.3 feet. And that's from 15 miles an hour to 0. And that's beating the next in line, the Nomad N1, by 2 whole feet almost. And honestly, the Nomad N1 brakes were borderline sketchy. Like, the way they engaged was very difficult to predict. That's the opposite with the Agent. You can really easily roll onto the brakes really smoothly and just stop really fast. That was awesome. I love the brakes on this thing, and even at high speed, the brakes do really well. And when you're going full speed or up in mid 30s, getting back down to 0 is really controllable and really confidence inspiring, which cannot be said for a lot of the cheaper boards that I've tried, especially short boards. When you're going 25 and it takes, like, for example, on the Cyber Mini X, when you're going 25 miles an hour and it takes 33 feet to stop, that is scary. What's not scary is having the ability to stop in 11.3 feet and not needing to use all of the braking. So there's some context for you. I think it did really well, and I'm really happy that it did well because it makes braking off-road a lot easier. As far as top speed goes, I was only able to get a top speed of around 37 on this board. This is going to depend a little bit on rider weight. Top speeds are always relative, and a lot of times companies overstate their numbers a little bit. MBS has been like pretty much spot on with all of their estimates, but I didn't quite get to the top speed that they have. I'm sure in the right conditions you can reach 41, but I just wasn't able to get there, which is fine. Honestly, a couple miles an hour at that speed doesn't make a huge difference, and most people are probably not going to be racing this thing, so they don't need to be riding at the absolute top speed all the time. So I'm pretty happy with 37. I want to say I hit 37, 38 maybe a couple times, but I'm not looking at my remote all the time, so I just go based off of Strava tracks when I'm doing the top speed runs. So pretty decent performance. It came in 6th place after the Nomads and the Rev and Defiant 1. Ironically, the Defiant 1 is still the fastest board that I've had on here, but the fact of the matter is it took so long to get there that you might as well not even have that top speed. So yeah, pretty good performance from the Agent on top speed. More than enough for most people. And what's definitely more than enough is the torque. Now, this is going to seem like wrong almost when you look at this chart, but the MBS Agent put down 150 Newton meters of torque. I went through these numbers multiple times because I thought it was almost unreasonable that it did this much more torque than the Phantom X. But I guess what it comes down to is the gear ratio, the wheel size, and the way that the ESC puts current into the motors. Now, I will say on the Phantom X, I know for sure that it hit the full 220 amps per motor at stall. How the numbers work out here, I don't know exactly, but I did them a couple times. I know that my measurement from the ground is right to get the right moment arm. So I'm fairly confident that this did the job. And the thing that backs up that confidence is how the Riot throttle works. It slams the power on so early. I don't know how it does that in the algorithm or whatever control system it's using to drive the motors, but it really puts the power down. And when you see the video on screen, you can see the deck like flexing, and it really pulled over 200 pounds. I think it was like 240 pounds on my crane scale that I used to do these tests. And that's the highest number I've ever seen on there. It's really impressive. And so much so that it was trying to do burnouts against the pole. And I didn't have that experience when I was doing my 0 to 20 launches. I guess because these tires are really grippy, they just had enough grip on the asphalt to not do a burnout, but you'll do a burnout instantaneously on dirt pretty much at any speed on this board. So be aware of that. You've always got torque down low, and that really helps a lot for hill climbing. You'll see in the comparison video that I did where me and Geelong did a hill climb with this board. The board wasn't really the limit, it was more of a grip limit and balance. And if we had done it enough times, the board had more than enough power to actually get up the hill that we were doing. So there you go. There's your performance spec. Tons of great data. I hope you guys appreciate all this data that I gather, because it does take a lot of work to get it. And we've got one more thing that goes into the performance score, which is the range. And that was 26.77 miles, I believe. I might be saying that wrong. I'll put it on screen with the performance spec now. But it did really well in its range test, a little bit better than I expected. And while the last bit of the range was not as useful, it's still enough to get you to your destination, so I still count that as a win. All right, let's summarize the score for the PSPEC. 2.33 second best 0 to 20, 150.94 Newton meters of torque, 37 mile an hour top speed, 11.3 feet braking, and 26.77 miles of range. That brings it to a total PSPEC of 91.1. This comes in second place, just behind the Rev Phantom X, which got 108.9. This is an incredible score, and putting this all together gives you some more context as to the entire board versus something like the next in line, which is the Nomad N3 at 76.6, and then the Mupo MLR, which is a completely different use case, but it's still a very performant board. So overall, it comes in second place. Really impressive PSPEC, and I'm really impressed with the performance of this board. It did a great job, and I want to keep riding it. Before we go into the subjective scoring, I want to talk a little bit about bindings. Now, I have ridden with MBS F5 bindings for a long time now, probably like 3 or 4 years. And these top pieces, the like foot hooks, whatever you want to call them, these are the same as the MBS F5. So you get the same really comfortable and really strong cross piece that you had on the F5. The only real difference, which to be fair is a big difference, is that you have a metal base plate on here that both restricts the movement in a way, but also provides a really sturdy and adjustable platform to stand on. Now, in terms of the top part, I love it, best in the business. However, I'm not 100% on board with the bottom part, at least not yet. I mean, I've ridden this board quite a bit now, but I'm struggling to see the benefit from a usability perspective of having the metal base plate on the bottom. There are a couple of advantages for sure. One, it makes it way stronger. As an engineer, the stress lines that come out of the binding mounting here are much better than the ladder strap design that they had on the previous bindings. It's just a much more optimal strain and stress load path to go into the fasteners at the edges of these sheet metal plates. Now, the metal plates themselves are fairly comfortable if you like a little bit of concave. You can't really feel the middle section too much when you're riding. They're very easy to adjust, which I have to give it to them. That's very convenient. And it's pretty easy to swap the bindings from goofy to regular. And you definitely cannot say the same for the old ones. But I found my feet a little bit more constrained than I wanted them to be. And maybe if I was riding all the time with heel straps, I wouldn't notice that as much, but I like to move my front foot quite a bit when I ride my other mountain board. And when you have the metal bits at the ends of your bindings, it's just not as flexible. And for me, I think I would lean towards the regular F5s. But good news for you guys is you can make that decision yourselves and choose whether you want to have the F5 or the F5X on the board. Now, if you're someone that's really going to be flinging this thing around, the increased strength of the F5X might be better for you. They are a bit more expensive, but you can always swap them later if you want. So if you have the F5s and you decide that they're just not strong enough, you can buy the F5X and just slap them on here, because with a purpose-built mountain board like this, they already have the holes for the F5X built in. I don't know. It looks like they also have holes for the F5s as well. So you're set on both fronts. And I think for me, I probably would go with the F5s to save a little bit of money and get like 80% of the experience of the F5X. I do think that they did a really good job with these bindings, and I have to give them props for that. But for me, I'm going to prefer the old ones. All right, so I have a couple of small issues that I've had with this board that I want to go through. And this is sort of a little bit uncomfortable just because I don't know exactly what the problem is. And well, I know what the problem is for one of them. The other one, I don't know what the source of the problem is. So the first one, I'll take this on myself. I accidentally ruined a bearing. One of the wheel bearings that goes onto the case. So I rode this in the rain. I'm not gonna lie. I thought it was capable, which I still think it is fully capable. And I think that this mistake was probably a combination of like unluckiness and potentially just an older bearing. But in any case, there is a bearing that holds the gear inside of the outer case. It's this one. I threw away the bad one, but this bearing is exposed to the elements, and it's possible that the race had gotten damaged at some point. The wheel on that side is actually damaged. It has a giant dent in it. Hasn't affected my riding whatsoever, but maybe when that damage happened, the race or the seal on the bearing got a little bit damaged. Regardless, it was really easy to fix. I told Joel about it, and he sent me new bearings from Amazon like the next day, which was amazing. And I was able to tap out the old bearing and put in the new bearing, and then I did all my performance testing on the brand new bearing. Worked perfectly fine. I will say the bearing on the other side was completely unaffected. The gear drive was unaffected, but on this side, the bearing had completely locked up, so I had to take it out, clean the slightly rusty grease out of the gear drive, re-grease it, and it's good as new. So that's one thing to say about the repairability. It was pretty easy to do that. I only had to use a screwdriver and some metal blocks to tap the bearing out. And then I just pressed the bearing in with my fingers, and then used a rubber mallet to tap in the rest, and worked out fine. Fixed the board, and we're back on track. No expense to me. I'm sure if you were a normal customer, you might have to pay for the bearing, but I mean, if they don't have them at MBS, you can get them on Amazon, and it came the next day. So really can't complain much about that. I also think that it's partly my fault for riding in the rain, but I think you should be able to ride your mountain board that's well sealed and IP rated in wet weather. But the one thing I always say is, regardless if the electronics can take it, your bearings are always going to be your point of failure, so you need to keep an eye on them. And once water gets into the gear drive, you need to replace the grease. So just be prepared for that if you're going to ride in the rain or in a lot of water. So that's that. The second issue was actually a disconnect issue. a cutout issue, which in my opinion is pretty serious. I don't know the cause though, so I can't really hold it against them too much, and I haven't heard anyone else have this issue, so I can only assume this is my unit. But I've had a couple instances where I've had a cutout of power, and one of them was while braking, or one of them was while riding normally. I had like a weird little cutout. I just felt the board jerk a little bit, and that's it. And then the second time was when I was doing my brake testing. I'll put a clip on screen of me falling off my board, 'cause it's kind of funny, but I was doing my brake testing, full power brakes from 15 to 0, and this was like the fifth run, something like that. Pulled full brake. I was leaning back fully, of course, because you have to brake in 11 feet. And it cut out, so the board went sliding forwards. I didn't have any idea why, and I just like fell down on my butt, and I actually sprained my thumb, which was really unfortunate. So that took like probably 4 months to heal, but it's my own fault for falling wrong. But regardless, that's why this string is broken from that fall, and I have no idea what happened. I told Joel about it, and he said maybe there's a chance that it was the battery. So this battery was one that they used for their certification testing. So it went through the maximum discharge current a bunch of times. It went through maximum heat a bunch of times. And ideally, it would be unaffected. But he thought maybe that's the reason that you had a cutout. I don't know. I'm just going to send you a new battery, which, again, amazing customer service. So this is the older battery. This is the new one. Unfortunately, they performed exactly the same. And I still had a cutout on the new battery. And this time, though, I was fortunate enough to be looking at the screen, and I was looking at the screen before with the very first cutout, and I thought for sure that I saw the little connection bars dip to like 1 bar for a second and then come back up. And I saw that again on this cutout. This was right before I did my acceleration testing. So I was practicing and it cut out a little bit while I was accelerating. So that was really confidence inspiring going into my full speed, almost 40 mile an hour runs. But I did do them. It took a while to get there, but yeah, so the cutout issue, I don't know what it is. I haven't heard anyone else have an issue with it. Everyone else had a great time with their agents. So hopefully when they get this board back, maybe they can open it up and replace something. Maybe the antenna got damaged. Like I couldn't tell you. Maybe the remote's bugged. I don't know. But this is 3 instances spread very far apart in completely unrelated circumstances in different locations. So I don't know. I have to chalk it up to an issue with my unit. If anyone else has had that issue, let me know down in the comments below, because I'm sure MBS will want to figure it out, whatever it is, and fix it, because that's just how they are. So those are my issues I've had. Everything else has been incredible. Nothing is broken at all. I mean, besides the bearing, obviously, but that's just a wear and tear item, and they fixed it, so can't complain too much. All right, so we're gonna do a little dimensions and weight section here, because I think that'll interest some people. So in terms of dimensions, we measure from the aftmost portion, which is the back of the motor guard, approximately to the front. We get 46 inches. Pretty beastly. Pretty hard to fit in small cars, but you can do it. Track width, outside of wheel to outside of wheels, 18 inches, pretty wide. And then I guess contact patch to contact patch is probably around like 15.5 inches. So you definitely feel the track width, but it's still really nimble with these CNC'd Matrix 3 trucks. In terms of binding placement, we're looking at about 21 inches from center to center. Feels pretty comfortable for me. I'm just under 6 feet, and I like that stance. Obviously, you have your angle adjustment available with the F5X, and then your deck width where you stand, which I love how wide this is, by the way. The deck itself is around 11 inches wide. The foot area on the F5X is about 10.5 inches, which I found was just enough for my feet. I wear size 10.5 shoes, so it was just enough. If you're in 12s or something, you're probably gonna hang off a little bit, but not a huge deal. The other dimension I wanted to measure was ground clearance, so let's flip it over real quick. I'm actually gonna grab 2 dimensions in this orientation. Grab the wheelbase, which is gonna be approximately 38.25 inches, 38.5, somewhere in there. And then our deck height, we've got 3 3/4 inches, 3 3/4 inches in the foot spot, and then about 3.5 inches in the lowest extreme here. And shockingly, not too much worse on the truck. The truck comes in at about 3 inches of ground clearance, so pretty good. Obviously, you have no battery underneath to worry about, so you can scrape the deck all you want. It's gonna last. It's got ABS on the outside to protect the outside of the deck, and then underneath, it's just your durable composite multi-layered thing. And honestly, I don't really have too many scrapes on here. There's definitely some from some rocks, but most of the time you just have enough ground clearance to get over things. While we're on the underside over here, you can see some damage on these gear drives. This is very much normal wear and tear. There's some chunks out of here from curbs and stuff. This entire piece here is actually sacrificial. So you can just pop this off with 2 screws and replace it if you want it to look good again. The gear drive itself is not actually damaged on either of these. This screw is a little bit chipped, but that's not really a big deal. It's not going to affect the functionality. So really good design there. And honestly, for how much off-road and stuff that's been put on this, it looks pretty good. The rear bash guard has definitely done its job a couple times. There's some pretty big dents and gouges in here, but it protected the motor. So again, it did its job. Really can't fault things doing their job. Final thing I want to talk about while we're down here is truck adjustment. Now, these are channel trucks. So if you've never had channel trucks before, you might not know, but the adjustment for the tightness is actually underneath. There are 2 set screws here with Allen heads that can adjust how tight the bushings are. So you screw them in to tighten them and unscrew them to loosen them. And with the Matrix 3s, you actually have 2 different positions. You can do an inner position or an outer position. The outer position is typically more stable and less nimble. The inner position is more nimble. So we're on the inner position on the front and on the back. I know some of my friends like to run outer position back, inner position front, but even in the time that I've had this board, which is like honestly like 5 months or something like that, I just haven't had a chance to get to that level of detail. So sorry about that, but if you do get this board, you can mess around with it and find what setup works for you. I really liked the nimble inner side, and honestly, if you can get all the way up to the speed that you want to get to on the most nimble setting, you should stay on it because it makes it safer, makes it easier to avoid things on the road, and it makes it much more fun when you can still do a U-turn in a single lane street. So with the bindings, you're definitely able to do that on the inner side, and overall the truck performance was good with the settings that it has right now, but you can adjust it if you want. All right, so it's time for the subjective scoring. Now, the RBEM Score has quite a few boards on it now, and we have another new winner. We've had a number of real killers on this chart on the channel recently, but there's a couple of boards that I have to review, 2 specifically, that aren't going to be as high on the list. So let's take a moment and just appreciate how well this board did. So starting off, 10 out of 10 on build quality. Honestly, I can't fault a single thing on this board. I mean, you could maybe, I was gonna say you could make, wow, honestly, I was just gonna say you could make the enclosure out of metal, but it's already metal, so we can't get any better there. Yeah, so case in point, I don't think you can get much better on build quality. Even the gear drives have gaskets in them to keep water out, so I'm really impressed with the quality of this build. Bindings, battery enclosure, attachment. This is plastic, but I would rather have a high strength plastic here than metal anyway, because it's just going to add so much extra weight. So they have tested this though, and they confirmed that this thing is super durable, and I definitely believe them. Connector to attach to the battery, super high quality. The attachment mechanism, super high quality. Really can't complain. Next up, deck. So I didn't rate this 10 out of 10 because, in my opinion, it could be just a tiny bit more flexible with a little bit more punch, I guess. But overall, really, really good. 9.7 out of 10. Best out of any deck on this chart, I think. Yeah, best out of any deck on this chart. Really, really like it. It's super comfortable. There's no ugly camber. And even if I was on the deck itself, I believe that the concave of the deck is almost the same as the F5X, so I think it would be really comfortable. But overall, great job. Super wide, good length, good wheelbase. All fits together to make, you know, a chart topper. Next up is the ESC. I wasn't sure how this was going to go initially because first 18S Hobbywing ESC could go really good, could go bad. But in this case, it went really well. And I give it a 9.7 out of 10 because it really does everything that you need to really smoothly. The brakes are incredible. Honestly, better than brakes on Vesk. And brakes on Vesk are really good. So to be able to eclipse that is really impressive. And I rated it slightly lower than the Vesk Phantom X just because Vesk is so much more versatile and adjustable. This is not really, like, you have levels that you can adjust in the remote and in the app. I think you can adjust like the power levels for each speed mode, but it's just not the same as Vesk. So it comes in at 9.7 out of 10, just barely below the best ESC that I've ever tested, which was the D100S on the Phantom X. Next up, trucks and bushings. I gave them an 8.5 out of 10, just because I don't think that channel trucks are the end-all be-all. I do think you can go up from here, and while these are good, they're nimble and they're pretty stable. There's always going to be something a little bit better, and in my opinion, the SAT trucks on the Rev are a little bit better than these. And you could probably build a DIY with that setup, and I think it would be a really good time. But for me, channel trucks are not the end-all be-all, and these are very good channel trucks. So they still scored pretty high at 8.5 out of 10. Wheel options for this board, you could fit pretty much any pneumatic on here as long as you have the right hole pattern. The one downside is, I believe with these adapters, you do have to be able to screw into the adapter from the wheel side. So you might have to swap screws depending on what your setup is. But you should be able to put pretty much any tire on here and most wheels. But you're not going to be able to put any urethane on here just because of how big the gear drives are. Not that you would ever have the need to do that, but for that reason, not being able to do everything is a 3 out of 5 for the wheel options. Next category is water resistance, and if there's any board that I would trust to ride in any water, it is the MBS Agent. This thing is as sealed as you can get pretty much, with an official real IP rating, which is something that I don't think any other board company has actually done. Regardless if they put it on their website or not, I don't actually believe it. But with MBS, I've actually seen real test reports that I can't share, but they've done real testing on all of these components. So you can definitely trust that they know what they're talking about. And I guarantee you that their riders have put this thing through things that are much worse than what I've done, which is just riding in light rain. Now, I didn't really take care of my board, or this board, as well as I should have after I rode it in the dampness. I should have used a compressed air and blown the water off and stuff, but the fact that it did as well as it did is because it does have really good water resistance, all the way down to the gear drive. So I gave it a 5 out of 5 for that, because I just don't think that you can get much better than this. Obviously, you could get a higher IP rating, but, you know, this is as good as it gets for an electric vehicle of this caliber. Next up, customer service. I gave them a 4.5 out of 5 because I think There's always room to improve on customer service. I think it'd be really hard to get a 5 out of 5 on customer service, but this is the highest rating I've given anyone besides Ace Deck, which, oh no, sorry. Yeah, this is the highest rating I've given anyone. I was like, that doesn't sound right. At 4.5 out of 5. My experience with them has mostly been through Joel, but everything I've heard about anyone needing MBS customer service has been great, and I do believe that the way I've been treated by Joel will be reflected by all the other customer service agents. If Joel's willing to replace things for me and always be there to answer, I really believe that other people will as well. So if you have anything to say about MBS customer service, leave it down in the comments below. I think they're unparalleled with the amount of support they provide through replacement parts, dimensions of things, CAD designs, depending on what it's been throughout the years. And I think that will continue forwards into their electric mountain board production history, I guess. Final category is price and value, and I rated this 4.1 out of 5. And the main reason being, it is still very expensive. So coming in at $36.99 for the Explorer version and $26.99 for the Air version with the 18S 2P. You know, it's not really reachable for a lot of people. If you save up for it and get it, fine, but it's still $3,700 and the reality is you can buy an entire car for that price. So when we're talking about the Rev Phantom X and the MBS Agent, they're very premium products, and there's no way of getting around that. So that's why it brings down the value score a little bit, but you get so much for the money with this board. You can ride in dirt and grass and gravel and pretty much ride wherever you want for a good amount of distance. So the value is high. And honestly, if I had one board only, it would be a hard decision between this and the Phantom X. If I were to have two boards, it would be this and the Phantom X. This for off-road, Phantom X for on-road. And they're fairly close in price as well, so your real decision is, do you want something that is super water resistant with a top mount enclosure to do off-roading, or do you want something that goes really far and has just as much power? So there you go. The total RBEM score is 64 out of 75, and I'm really impressed with how this board did. And there's not really a lot that can eclipse this in terms of better performance and better anything. So I feel like we're getting close to the maximum score of what we can actually do here. Also, I believe I said 75. I think it's actually 70. Yeah, the maximum score is 70. So we're getting really close to what you can reasonably do in a board. So I just really can't say enough good things about it. And I hate that some people will think of that as like shilling for the company. The reality is it's just actually that good. So if you have anything to say about it, let me know what you think of your MBS Agent down in the comments. I know a lot of people love it, and I want more people to get on it because it's a lot of fun. All right, so we've talked about a ton of things in this video. The point was for this to be a super comprehensive review of the MBS Agent, and now it comes down to the conclusion. Is this the best board that I've ever ridden? Pretty much. Between this and the Phantom X, it's a pretty hard decision. As best board for me is like most versatile. Can I commute to work on it if I so desired? Can I ride off-road on it if I so desired? Does it have as much power as I could possibly want, plus a little bit? Definitely. Does it have as much speed as I want? Pretty much. I don't really go 40 like often at all nowadays. I pretty much max out at like 35. I don't need to go faster than that. It's just so fast. So overall, honestly, this is probably one of the best boards you can buy on the market. There might be some offerings from other foreign companies that are good, maybe competitive, but I think it would be pretty hard to match this all-encompassing package that you get with the MBS Agent. So hopefully Joel and MBS, you guys like this review. I think everyone will like this review. I think that you guys have built an incredible product, and it's something that I would love to keep on my shelf for a long time. Unfortunately, I can't afford it, so it's going back to MBS, And for now, I'm just gonna stick with my DIYs, which do maybe 80% of what this does, but they're not as water resistant and they might break sometimes, but that's what you get for being a DIY guy. So if you're looking for a production mountain board, I can't recommend this thing enough. I do want to know what that cutout issue was, but I think it might just be my unit, so hopefully that's the case. I did feel I had to mention in this video, as much as I hate to not give you guys a solution to what it was or have an idea. That's really annoying, but yeah, I felt like I had to mention it. So there you go. There's your MBS Agent review. If you have any questions at all, let me know down in the comments, and I'll answer them as best as possible. But for now, stay safe, keep on riding, and peace out.